Welcome to House of Horns. It's week 11. Maybe I'm not too sure who they play this week. Rams fans, you probably are heartbroken about the Cooper Kupp injury. 3-6. Maybe forgot to look at the schedule because what's the point? But no, not here. House of Horns. There's games to be played. You got to play for pride. Be professional. And we're going to go through to the end. The Rams play the New Orleans Saints without Cooper Kupp, but we have a show for you. I'm Gilbert Manzano, Rams beat reporter for the OC Register LA Daily News. And as always, joining me, Victor Javier Corona. You like that? A little more flavor? Corona?
Yeah.
AKA Victor Producer. Vic, you do a fantastic work. So you're not going to let up, right? Week 11?
No, I almost forgot here that it was week 11. I still had week 10, so I was still in last week's mode. So, but I'm glad you have good energy today. I didn't know what to expect. I thought you were gonna kind of throw it in for the rest of the season. Now that it looks kind of bleak of the Rams, but I kind of wanted to ask you about that since you brought it up. How are things at Rams practice now? Are they finally breathing a lot better now that it seems like the season hasn't gone the way people expected? So how are things looking there, Gilbert?
Yeah, hopefully my Wi-Fi is not down, so I see the one bar here. But Victor, I think they officially know that they're rock bottom, and officially, the Rams have placed Cooper Kupp on injured reserve. He's going to be out for 4 games, and the recovery timeline for this, I think they're calling it tightrope surgery for the ankle, 5 to 6 weeks. I don't know math too well, but if he's out for 6 weeks, that's 6 games, and you have 8 games to go, and you're 3-6. Probably not coming back, Victor. So they hit rock bottom. I think now they're laid back. It's kind of like, hey, just see what happens. Play the games. If you make a push for the playoff, great. If you don't, they already expected that. So it was a laid back Sean McVay. I'm in good spirits because I got a haircut. I feel good. I look
Ah,
good. That's the reason why. But I am also a little surprised it's week 11. It kind of goes by fast. But then when you look at it, it's like, wait, maybe not too fast because there's been very bad football for the last, 2 months. But in terms of the Rams, I think they finally know playoffs are probably not an option. You got to play for pride. You got to play and be professional, earn that paycheck because it's not easy to get a second contract in the NFL. There's a lot of people are doing playing for different reasons, and that's where we are, Victor.
yeah, and us here on House of Horns, we're not packing it in yet. We got a great show for you guys. We got your usual stuff, your news and notes from Gilbert as he talked about what he saw today from practice. We also have your storylines with the Rams and the Saints as they get ready to match up on Sunday live from New Orleans, and then we also have your keys to the game. We have a House of Horns mailbag. We got 3 questions in today. That was awesome to see from the fans, from the 366 subscribers that we have, Gilbert. You're doing a good job with all those locker room videos that we're getting a lot of subscribers and we're getting a lot of feedback. And we also have our game predictions. But before we get to news and notes, I know you want to get the people more involved as they've been doing so, and we thank everybody for doing that. But what question do you have for the fans this week for them to engage with us, Gilbert?
Yeah, before we get to the full preview here, again, my Wi-Fi is down, but let me know, Victor, if I'm cutting out. Before we get to
No,
the
you're good.
full preview here of the Saints game, I want people to comment. Like last week, I think I was asking who should be the lead back. This week, it's an appropriate question. It's time to see the younger players. When you're 3-6 and you're not really in the playoff race, you want to see the younger guys develop. Who's going to stand out and have momentum for next year to help out? So there's a lot of young players here with the Rams. So comment who you want to see, and I'll give you a couple names here. The popular one, the rookie running back, Kyren Williams, the wide receiver, Tutu Atwell, second round pick last year. Tutu's been inactive for the last couple of games, so maybe it's time he finally gets to see, hey, you got something or not, man? Bring it. This is your opportunity, especially with Cooper Kupp out. Uh, Also, another one on offense, tight end Bryson Hopkins. I want to say second and third year tight end. I know Higbee kind of runs the show there, but might as well see what you have in Bryson, right?
Yeah.
And then on defense, Terrell Lewis, the outside linebacker, keeps splitting with Justin Hollins. At some point, it's kind of like, all right, enough with Justin Hollins. Let's see more Terrell Lewis. Let him go off. And he's a starter now. He overtook him, but he's kind of been on a 50-50 split there. This was a tricky one. Ernest Jones. You can't play a lot of inside linebackers. You know that, Victor. Uh,
Yeah.
Bobby Wagner, the veteran superstar player who's playing really well. Do you start eating some of those snaps for Bobby and let the young guy play? I don't know about that one. And then is that what I have so far? Those are a few names that I
Yeah.
have. But you have anybody who's a young player? Let's cap it at maybe year 3, 1, 2, or 3. Put a name in the comments. Who do you want to see more of the rest of the way?
Can I give you a name that
Yes,
honestly
please.
you don't have on here, but I kind of thought about right once you posted the question, and that's Kobe Durant. I kind of want to see a
Yeah.
little bit more from him. I want to see how he develops the rest of the season. I know there's been high hopes. He's had a couple of games where we even gave him a player of the game. He's had a good performance so far, so I want to just see how he develops the rest of the season, especially as you try to find somebody to play alongside Jalen Ramsey. So that's my pick for
That's a good
me.
that's a good one. Because
Yeah.
Victor, like, now I think about it, I feel like Darion Kendrick gets more run than Kobe Durant. So I don't know what's going on there. That's actually a good one.
Yeah. But let's get to your news and notes. You were down in Thousand Oaks
Yeah.
today, and you gave us a little preview of how things are going down there, how people are feeling. But just give us what you have from your notebook today.
Yeah, I'll save the Matthew Stafford update for the storyline because that's a big one. But yeah,
Mhm.
like I mentioned, people are a little more chipper up there in Thousand Oaks because they know what the outcome of the season is going to probably look like. It was very windy today, so that it pushed back practice. So it's kind of like a weird practice, but at this point, maybe nothing you could do but just kind of like laugh or be like, okay, what the heck? What else can you do? So, Victor, I started writing my notebook early. I'm like, okay, they're gonna get David. That's one of the notes. David Edwards is coming back from IR. He's designated to return, and Sean McVay said David Edwards should be good to go to play, which is crazy
Okay.
to think because he had 2 concussions earlier this
So,
year, but it sounds like he's ready to go. And I started writing the stories like, oh, that could be 4 out of the 5 week 1 starters on the O line. That's a long
mhm.
time ago. Like Rob Havenstein, Coleman Shelton, David Edwards, Brian Allen. And then Brian
Yeah.
Allen did not practice. He has a thumb injury and he's dealing with the knee injury. So Sean McVay said he doesn't know what's the status of Brian Allen. So that creates more shuffling. That means Coleman Shelton will probably be the center if Brian Allen doesn't play, which I think you could put in David Edwards at left guard, but then a right guard, I think you go back to Odi Abushi, Matt Skura. Chandler Brewer is not an option because he has an MCO injury out 4 to 5 or 4 to 6 weeks. But then if Brian Allen plays, that's 4 out of the 5. That's pretty good. But left tackle, you're down to your third string tackle. Uh, Alaric Jackson, he had a knee injury, didn't play last week. But then Sean McVay said that he's dealing with blood clots. So that sounds
Yeah, I
very
saw that.
serious. And so he's shut down for the season. So I don't know what you want to bring up here because it feels like we always talk about offensive line injuries. It's going to be the 10 combination in 10 games. So it's just always something with this whole line.
Yeah, you just gotta try and find the 5 best people at this point and try to go with that. I mean, you're going to New Orleans and the Saints, they play really well at home. They might be having a tough year this year, but they seem to show up for their team. The fans do. They're very loyal down there in New Orleans. And so it's going to be hard too. Like as you were talking about with the whole wind conditions, it made me think of, well, at least it's not Buffalo where they're supposed to get a bunch of snow down there, so um, they can deal with the wind down here in Los Angeles, which we kind of, I mean, the Santa Anas are, we're not weather people here, but they can get pretty bad down here as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, honestly, this is what they've dealt with. We talked about it in the post game show that they've been the healthiest team the past 4 years, and then this year they just got bit hard. I mean, it happens. This is the NFL. Eventually, it's gonna happen. It's just been a bad year for the Rams in terms of injuries, and they're doing the best they can, with what they have. And as they go forward, this will be something that they can build on in terms of making sure that now that you have depth, create depth is will be something key for this team. But the other thing you had on here was the feel good stories. Tell us about those.
Yeah, I'll go try to give you a positive story here. And yes, it was a losing effort, but to see Kyren Williams and Van Jefferson just flash, do something in this loss to the Cardinals, was good for them on a personal level, because these are two players who had surgery twice in a span of 4 to 5, 6 months, not even that long. And Van Jefferson had two knee rehabs on the same knee. He had surgery after the Super Bowl, then had to have surgery again during training camp, and he wanted to be out there for his teammates, and he had to miss the first 6 games. Couldn't really play much the first 2 games he was back. The third game he was benched for Ben Scarani. I think it was more for game plan reasons, because they wanted to use him as a fullback. But then he got the touchdown in garbage time. To us, it's kind of like, who cares? It's garbage. But for Van Jefferson, it was a confidence builder. It was a reward for going through the rehab and coming back, going through that grind, that mental grind, the physical grind, and then to get a touchdown against his father, Sean Jefferson, who's like an assistant head coach for the Cardinals, also wide receivers coach. And he kind of like almost broke down when he told us the story. He actually, he did it on the field when he saw his dad. And he was like, because the dad knows what he went through. So that was pretty cool for Van Jefferson to get that touchdown. It was more than garbage touchdown. And then for Kyren Williams, I talked to him in the locker room today. It was the first time I got to meet Kyren Williams, because when I got to the Rams beat, he was dealing with the foot injury. I couldn't talk to him when players are injured on IR. We're not allowed to talk to him as media. So he's finally back on the team, because remember week 1 he had that injury. He
Right.
was hurt on the opening kickoff. Just bad
Yeah.
luck for him. Two surgeries, an ankle and a foot. And I said, "Hey, I'm Gilbert. LA Daily News. You want to get to know you." And this guy was a happy-go-lucky guy, good spirit. And I told him, "Hey, you kind of showed some pop in that first carry." Like, yeah, like it meant the world to me to get that carry. I finally got in the game. To complete a game was big for Kyren Williams. I think he said there was like a play where like it could have been for 30 yards, but he just missed it or something. So he was kind of beating himself up. So to get to meet Kyren Williams today, I could tell why people like this guy. We'll see how much he gets to play for the rest of the year. But for those two guys, they overcome 2 injuries to be on the field and complete the game was pretty good for them.
No, and those are great stories, man. Like it's good to hear. We get lost sometimes in the human side of players because they play a game where they're all suited up. They have a helmet on. We don't know. It's not like the NBA or in baseball where you get to see their faces, and so you're just getting to see people behind a helmet. And sometimes it's good to see these stories and hear about them and recognize the things that they do outside because they're not robots out there, they're human beings. And yeah, it's good to hear these stories, especially from Van Jefferson and Kyren Williams. So yeah, man, it's great info for you guys there. Let's get to our storylines now, Gilbert, as we move through our preview. um let's start it off with the Rams, and of course, as the big story is whether or not Matthew Stafford is going to play against the Saints after being on concussion protocol. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but don't say he has a concussion. Sean McVay won't tell us if Matthew Stafford ever had a concussion, which is I don't know what's going on there with that. He refuses to tell us, does he have one or not? Just tell us. He
Yeah.
doesn't, but it doesn't matter at this point, because that's I guess they're gonna keep it private. They whatever they feel like they want to do with the information, whatever. But they feel comfortable enough now for Sean McVay to say, "Hey, I expect my starting quarterback to be available in New Orleans." So he gets that clearance from the doctors. Also mentioned the family. He wants the wife Kelly, uh, everybody involved in part of his family to make sure, "Hey, are you good? Doctors say you're okay, but we got to have a family meeting." So Once Sean McVay gets the clearance from the family and the doctors, Matthew Stafford is supposed to be a full go, no limitations, ready to go. He was a full participant at practice today. Matthew Stafford was. Sean McVay expects Stafford to be a full participant for the whole week, and he guessed that probably by Friday he should know if he got the clearance or not. But he's expecting it. He's confident, so that'll be a big boost for the Rams to go against Andy Dalton and the Saints, because it almost became Bryce Perkins against Andy Dalton. That would have been interesting, Victor. There, so also they're a little thin at quarterback because John Wolford, poor guy, man, he had to go in there and take the hits for Stafford. And when I was looking at that stat line, it kind of got away from me, but John Wolford took 12 quarterback hits in that Cardinals game. Only 3 sacks, but took 12 hits. And I don't think Stafford got hit more than 11 times, like 3 times, Never got to 12. But it just shows you, man, like this offensive line is just kind of like crushing these quarterbacks. So that's why I'm glad for Stafford that he got at least 1 week off, because you don't want to just throw yourself out there with this offensive line. So, but we'll see. I'm sure they're kind of leaning more on the cautious side, and we'll see how they go from there. But yeah, John Wolford has a neck injury, and it's tough for Wolford because a lot of people are blaming him for the Cooper Kupp injury because he didn't throw the ball the right way. He kind of put him in harm. And then when he got the neck injury, people are saying, "Oh, he got cut because he hurt Cooper Kupp." But no, it's not that. He just took a beating in the Cardinals game.
Yeah, no, and if you look at the play, I mean, it's mostly on the defender there. I mean, he undercut his legs there. So, and don't go after that player. I mean, it happens. This is
Yeah.
part of football. I see a lot of fans going after, opposing players who caused an injury there. It wasn't malicious or anything like that. So it's just part of football, man. Some injuries are gonna happen, but getting back on track here, and segueing into Cooper Kupp, what does the Cooper Kupp injury mean going forward for the Rams now?
Yeah, going off of what you said, though, even Cooper Kupp in his tweet said, "Hey, it's part of the game," so he's not mad at anybody for what happened. But yes, it really means a lot for the Rams. It affects them a lot. I don't think anybody in the NFL gets used as much offensively as Cooper Kupp does. His rate for targets is just crazy. He gets like 30-40% of the target on offense, and this pace he's been on the last 2 years. It's funny, Victor, because both like he had the triple crown last year, right? Like he was offensive reigning player of the year, led the league in catches, receiving touchdowns, receiving yards, and he was kind of on pace to do that. I know Tyreek Hill's having a crazy year with Miami Dolphins, but he was still having a crazy statistical season with targets, especially with targets, man. Uh, and,
Yeah, he
and
was having a better season than
yeah,
he
that's the
did
crazy
when
part.
he had to. Yeah,
But he
exactly.
wasn't leading it. It was because Tyreek Hill's having
Right.
such a great year. But that's the funny thing is like it worked last year and it didn't work this year. Like feeding Cooper Kupp. Obviously, there's different things to it, but I think maybe that's why they were so stubborn to spread the ball around. Like it worked last year to keep doing it. So he was on a crazy pace. It was just two different kind of views to it: a Super Bowl and a really, really crappy season. But regardless, Cooper Kupp always came to play. It's crazy, he was always pretty good, like he was kind of like maybe he was kind of like on the Keenan. You know how we think about Keenan Allen every year, really, really,
Yes.
really good, but not top 5. And then just Cooper Kupp went like to this crazy level, and then he just became the heart and soul of the Rams. So my colleague, real quick, sorry, Kevin
No.
Modesti wrote a column saying, "What will life look like without Cooper Kupp?" And it's just crazy that we're here.
Yes. No, and I was just gonna say, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that the Cooper Kupp taking that next step. It reminds me of what we saw from Josh Allen, where he went from like average quarterback to like elite quarterback. Although he's kind of taking a step back this season, but yeah, that's something that you look at with players in terms of hitting that third year or fourth year, you expect him to have that breakout season, and that's what Cooper Kupp did. And then he was like, okay, I'm gonna I'm not only at that level, but I'm gonna stay at that level, and he did that this year. And had it not been for that injury, he probably would have eclipsed what he did last year. So it looks like, he is that player that he's not a 1 year guy, that he is actually gonna get better as he goes on with his career. So, and it also helps to have someone like Matthew Stafford giving you the ball, who has a good arm. And I know he struggled with John Wolford there. He was what one he had 3 catches for -1 yards, but that wasn't on John Wolford. That was just the way they were playing. They kind of did what we expected the Rams to do with Hopkins to Cooper Kupp. They pretty much played him. They took him away, and was the reason why they won that game. But yeah,
Yeah.
like it'll be interesting to see what happens now and how they spread the ball now that he's no longer there. It does I know a lot of people who have been well, one thing I'll say is that I know a lot of fantasy owners are disappointed. They're like, oh, my season's over now. Cooper Kupp was the guy who had me at whatever 6-2, 7-1, whatever it was that you were at. So I know our compa Fernando was really disappointed and was asking you what the hell was going on with that. McVay, blaming McVay for getting Cooper Kupp hurt, but that's not. We were just having a little fun with that. But yeah, and then the other thing is like what happens now with this team? Like, are we gonna see Stafford spreading the ball as I talked about earlier? Are we finally gonna see Allen Robinson, doing well like people expected? And then how does this affect Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee? Do we see better numbers from them going forward?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for a lot of these wide receivers, and again, remember we spent too much time on it in the preseason. Like, oh, they have 8 good receivers. Who's gonna make this roster? And then it comes down to the real season, and there's not enough targets to go around. So, maybe a guy like even Jacob Harris gets in there. Who knows? He's on the practice squad. Lance McCutcheon got a couple cracks
That's
at
what
it
I was
last
gonna
week.
bring up.
Maybe he gets a chance too. I don't know, Victor. But
Preseason star.
yeah, like I wouldn't mind seeing more of these guys. And like I mentioned, Tutu Atwell, he's been inactive, but you spent a second round pick on the guy. When else are you going to use him now?
No.
And also credit for Van Jefferson. Like he waited out his turn last week, and then when Cooper Kupp went down, he made the most of his opportunities. He didn't care that it was a garbage time touchdown. He didn't care that the game was over. He was going to make the most of it. So you need guys like that. Some urgency and just play for the next contract, play for opportunities next year. But the funny thing is, like, what do you do with Allen Robinson? Like, you paid the guy, he's gonna now he becomes a number one, right? So, so maybe keep him involved heavily, and then just somehow get the other guys. Like, I feel like we know Ben Skowronek already. We know he's a grinder, he's a physical
Yeah.
guy. You want that guy around, but I don't know about how much playmaking you want to see out of him because you know he does other things that a lot of people don't want to do. So how about you give Tutu Atwell a chance? I think we know about Brandon Powell. His job is safe because he's a special teams guy too. So Tutu, Lance, I want to see more of those guys. And even Bryson Hopkins too. Like this guy got chosen as a number 2 tight end. Hasn't done anything. He had a couple glimpses last week, but then they went away from him. So, and also too, like scheme wise, you gotta reinvent yourself in a short period because it was a lot of Cooper Kupp heavy here, and then Stafford too. Like we kept blaming the guy for not spreading the ball around. Now he has to. So, it's gonna be interesting to see how they respond. Victor here to end out the Rams storyline, but I still can't believe that Cooper Kupp had 3 catches for -1 yard last week because he does not do things like that. Obviously, a career low for him. I think he's had a couple games where he doesn't get a catch, and he did better because it was 0 yards. So it was just a weird, crazy game, and hopefully Cooper Kupp recovers quickly. But I think his players will step up and fight for him. I don't know if they'll lead to wins, but they'll try to make the most of it.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, do you want to keep talk about the how does this team respond, or do you want to move on to the Saints storylines here?
Yeah, let's go to the Saints. I feel like with the Cooper Kupp talk we had, pretty much covers it.
Okay, sounds good. So the first one that I'll start off with in terms of New Orleans is today Dennis head coach Dennis Allen announced that he's gonna stick with Andy Dalton at quarterback. We've had this conversation during in the Compas on the Beat. I know you've been a big not a big fan of these mid-tier quarterbacks like Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. And I think one of the things is why I put this as a storyline was because not only because of how you feel about this, but also because why were the Saints all in on this season? And I just don't understand why they were, because how are you betting on someone like Jameis Winston's or Andy Dalton? And now it looks like Dennis Allen has decided, you know what, I'm gonna make my bet with Andy Dalton, and I'm not gonna go back to Jameis Winston. Which, I mean, part of the problem here too, as we're going to get into, has to do with the picks, with the draft picks, but that'll be another thing. But what are your thoughts with New Orleans sticking with Andy Dalton? And I know it's a mess.
Yeah, but I feel like at some point it's like you can't keep playing musical chairs at the quarterback position. You're not gonna like Jameis Winston is not a young guy. Like you know how what happened with Tua and Fitzpatrick a couple years ago is like you go to Fitzpatrick, you go back to Tua. I get that because he's a young guy and he's eventually gonna be your franchise quarterback, so you want to see more of him, make him grow. Jameis Winston ain't that. He ain't gonna be a guy who's gonna grow. So might as well, you know, here's one way I know they want to keep Andy Dalton. Alvin Kamara has played his best when Andy Dalton is under center. So your best weapon, maybe your only weapon, because Michael Thomas got hurt, and I know Chris Olave is pretty good. I shouldn't say that, but your best player on offense does better with Andy Dalton than he does with Jameis Winston, who's kind of like, gun it down the field, spread it out. And that's not the way this same system worked, with Sean Payton. It was like, give it to your guys in space, pretty quick dump offs, and that's what you do with Alvin Kamara. So I know some people don't like that approach, but I think with Andy Dalton, he at least does that, protects the ball a little better. But either way, we're not doing anything for you, and it's funny how like these two teams went all in this year, and they're both one's 3-6 and one's 3-7, so not a good look for both sides.
Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to touch on here with the storylines was Dennis Allen, the head coach. He takes over for Sean Payton, and he was with the Raiders. He had an 11-35 record, and so you're talking about giving a guy a chance again. He's been with the Saints for a while. He's been great with defensively, being the defensive coach, defensive coordinator, and now they're 3-7 again, and now his overall record is 14-44. I mean, I don't know how long they're gonna give him, how long of a leash, but it seems like the Saints have been all in every year. They wanted to show faith in him, and maybe it didn't. Maybe it was a mistake or not, and who knows how they're gonna go from here on out. But it just doesn't seem like he's the right guy. So what have you seen, or what do you think happens with Dennis Allen?
Yeah, sometimes coaches are just better coordinators than they are head coaches, and maybe it's unfair to say that, for Dennis Allen. But my biggest issue with Dennis Allen was like they pretty much said, "Hey, we're gonna have you do what Sean Payton did. Here's all the good players. It's the same foundation. We're gonna keep trying to win and go to the Super Bowl. Yeah, don't worry about the quarterback. That's fine, but it's still a win now team. Do the same system, keep everything intact, and just do what Sean Payton does." And that was just a recipe for disaster, because we've seen guys try to do that, like Josh McDaniels try to do it in Denver. Maybe he's trying to do it with the Raiders. That better about that, Victor. But they always go from like Bill Belichick and they try to do it. We saw with Joe Lombardi try to do it. With the Detroit Lions, it didn't work. He's trying to do it with with the Chargers. It's not really working. So you come from a scheme, you learn from a great mastermind, and you try to do the same thing and copy it. It just doesn't work that way sometimes. Like I get Mike McDaniel is doing the same thing that Kyle Shanahan did in San Francisco. But Mike McDaniel kind of, engineer that type of scheme. He knows how to do it. So I don't know. I just felt like they were just trying too hard to copy what Sean Payton did, and didn't let Dennis Allen do what he maybe brings differently. I don't know. But it's a second crack now for him. It's not working. It's year one of a head coach. But I wouldn't be surprised if they pull the plug on him.
Yeah, and then part of the problem here is, so you're all in on your coach and you're all in on this team. You lose guys, to free agency, like the safety that went to the Baltimore Ravens. His name escapes me right now, but he was the one that gave up the Minneapolis Miracle on
Marcus
that play. But
Williams.
Marcus Williams, thank you, and he was really good outside of that play. And he's been someone they've missed. They brought in, the Honey Badger to replace him. They brought in Marcus May from the Jets to try and see if that it hasn't worked out. But my biggest problem with the Saints this year was the before they got into the season. It was during draft season, and so they trade up with the Eagles to get and give up some of the draft picks, and everybody thinks, okay, they're going to go after a quarterback. They saw that Jameis Winston wasn't the guy. Instead, they pick up Chris Olave, who's been great as a receiver. He's been their best receiver, with the injuries that have happened. And then they also drafted Trevor Penning, who's been out. He got hurt. We saw all training camp how good he was. So he's probably going to work out. But you don't get your stud quarterback, and then you give up draft picks, and now you're in the same place as the Rams, where both of your picks are going to end up as top 10 picks to the Lions and the Eagles. And that's
Yeah.
something where, yeah, like the picks is all great and all, but then eventually you have to pay for those. And wouldn't it have been nice for the Rams and the Saints to have a top 10 pick, when you're having a season like this? So that's the other storyline for me, Gilbert.
Yeah, these teams are very similar. You know how we were saying like the Buccaneers and the Rams are very
Yeah.
similar. Like they're similar like now, but come off season, the Saints and the Rams are very similar because they don't have a draft pick and they went all in. And at least with the Rams, like you had Stafford and you had a Super Bowl winning team last
Yeah,
year, and
that's the difference.
yeah,
You
you
won a
lost a
Super
couple
Bowl.
guys and you do it again. But the Saints didn't do anything last year. Did they even make the playoffs? I forgot. Maybe they made the wild card. Who cares? But it was nothing crazy. And then when you go into the season with Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton, I don't get why you throw your chips into that. So uh, sometimes I get you always got to win the games, but I like the teams that kind of just prepare for the draft because you rather go down with your young franchise quarterback and see what he has. Like the Bears are losing right now with Justin Fields, but at least he's going to be a stud in the next couple of years. So, um, the Rams don't really have that kind of thing right now. They're in a weird place because they're with Stafford. Like this nucleus here with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey is like they're intact for the next 3 years. Cooper Kupp comes back healthy. It could have been worse with Cooper Kupp. So it won't be like an off-season kind of injury for him. So they're still intact to make a run. But then that first-round draft pick could have helped this kind of core for next year. Like they could have got a tackle in the top 10. But I hadn't even looked, Victor, but I bet you it's like a top 10 pick right now or something.
For who? For the
For the
Saints or
Lions.
for the Rams?
For the
For
Lions. The,
for for
the,
the
the Rams pick, which is to the Lions.
number 8 right now,
Okay.
and
There you
and
go.
and the New Orleans Saints number 4 to the
Mm,
Eagles. So the Eagles are not only the best team in the NFC, but they might get a top 5 pick. So that's the other
okay.
problem. And I know we're going a little long, but we didn't have a guest this week on from the Saints. So, we're spending a little bit more time kind of going over some of these the opponent for the Rams, and I mean, yeah, this is the one of the things when I was kind of doing research, like as I was reading about the Saints and some of the complaints people have, the same issues that the Rams are having. So as you talked about with the Bucks a couple of weeks ago, it's the same thing. It's like the Spider-Man meme, like they're both looking at each other and they're pointing at each other like, yeah, we're in the same situation, buddy.
The funny thing,
So
even the Cardinals game could have been a Spider-Man meme because they both have backup quarterback. It's just funny that every single week they're
yeah.
playing teams are in the same situation, but they're still losing the games. The Rams are. It's weird.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say one more thing before we move on this issue was or on this topic, and you can keep your quarterback, or keep bring in a bring in a new head coach. But as you talked about with Mike McDaniel, also look at what's going on with the Vikings. Like, they decided not to tear down their team, right? They're like, okay, we're
That's
gonna
true.
bring in a new coach, and we're gonna give him a chance to work with Kirk Cousins, like Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, all these offensive weapons, and we're gonna let you do it for one more year and see if it works out. And if not, we're gonna tear this up. And look, it's worked out so far. And sometimes it doesn't. Like, you have to make sure that if you're gonna do something like that, then you got to bring in an offensive guy. And I get it. Not you know. Bill Belichick has been great because he's a defensive minded coach, but he also had Tom Brady, so that also helps. But that
And
was that
also
was the last
too,
thing I
real quick, also too, because that was an outside kind of hire. It wasn't like, hey, let's kind of elevate the
exactly.
guy who's in now and copy everything. No, he was his own flavor, his own style, and I can see why that works.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great point by you. But let's get to our player matchups now. I'll let you start. Who do you have for this week's matchup?
Yeah, I know we're always repeating ourselves, but for a couple of weeks, I thought the offensive line was looking okay. It wasn't too bad. It was doable, and then they really took a step back last week. Like, they made JJ Watt turn back the clock. JJ Watt I think he had 5 quarterback hits. I think even a sack. He could have had a scoop and score fumble touchdown, but the
Yeah.
referee blew the play dead way too early, so they got to cut a break there. But when this Cardinals pass rush is having a day like that, where they have 12 quarterback hits on John Wolford, they're not a good pass rush. So that's a lot of problems right there. So Cameron Jordan, I think Marcus Davenport is dealing with an injury. I don't know, but that's a pretty good 1-2 punch. It's not the best, but it's pretty good. It's productive. It's solid. Cameron Jordan always brings it. So that could be a pretty big issue for the offensive line here, especially if there's no Brian Allen, and then you're going with your third string left tackle. I don't want to get the name wrong, but Ty Naseki, I think that's what it is. And I don't know if I brought up this nugget just yet. I might have, but Ty. But I caught up with Ty in the locker room maybe a couple weeks ago when he first joined the Rams, and he's like, "Yeah, it's hopefully stop me if I already said it, but like it's kind of surreal being here with the Rams because I was with the St. Louis Rams, and the funny thing that happened when I joined the St. Louis Rams, they also got me from the Colts practice squad, and that's what happened
Oh,
this time. It was like 12 years apart, like it was like a full circle thing for Ty. So just kind of an interesting storyline there. Ty is not going to be probably the starting left tackle for the rest of the year, and this guy's a veteran, 12 years, but it's not a good situation to be in. It was a good little story, but it's not a good situation for the players on the field. And they got Matthew Stafford coming back without Cooper Kupp. So uh, I don't know. At some point, you got to get good protection because if you're trying to stretch the field out to Van Jefferson and Allen Robinson, you got to have some decent protection here. So I think that's a key matchup here. This O line against Cameron Jordan and the Saints front. Uh, 10th offensive line, the 10th combo here. Sounds like a big play at your favorite Hawaiian barbecue place, and you want give me that
yeah.
that 10th combo
Number
over there,
10.
number 10, and that's what they have here. And yeah, it could be a long day for Stafford. If you're Stafford and you're taking a bunch of hits, you're probably thinking, why did I come back so soon? So for them, you got to step up offensive line there for the 10th combo of the season.
Yeah, when you start getting down into the double digits in terms of combo, you're not looking at a great combination there. So, and that's what's going on with the
Number
Rams.
10.
Yeah, the number 10. Once you start going down in the double digits, man, you're in trouble there at your restaurant. But hey, maybe you find a hidden thing there. But in terms of the offensive line, it'll be interesting to see. And I know we were talking about this earlier, and I was gonna ask you, do you think they stay with the 11 personnel now that Cooper Cup is gone?
That's a very good question. I think for the first time, Sean McVay is serious about just trying different options. And shout out to Jordan Rodriguez from the Athletic. She had a good point today, or a good
Yeah.
question about how, like, the Rams play 11 personnel heavy, and they were going all in for this pass heavy offense. But then they didn't realize that now the rest of the league is going to play the too high shell and take away all the big explosive plays. And what teams did to adjust to this style of defense that got popular by the year was focused on the running game, and it's kind of been a comeback resurgence of the running game, and the Rams fell behind in that trend. And I was like, oh, that's actually a good point there, because the way to beat this too high shell, underneath stuff, run heavy offense, and the Rams are not doing that. So maybe this is finally the time where Sean McVay says, like, Jordan, you were right there. Just do a jumbo package, play from the eye, smash mouth football. I don't know, whatever, 12 personnel, maybe a couple tight ends, whatever crazy thing you could think of. I don't know too much the formations he could tinker with, because Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson, you got to push it down the field, but you got to work that underneath stuff in the running game to get that going. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Victor, because he's gonna have to reinvent something here and try to make it work. And I'm curious to see what he does, because we've been waiting for McVay to kind of get this offense going, and now he has no option but to do something different.
Yeah, and I was gonna bring up two things that I've been we've talked about this on the regular Compass on the Beat in terms of the too high shelf, and I think it's here to stay. It's not a trendy thing, kind of like the Wildcat that we saw on offense, but it's kind of like what we saw with baseball in terms of people aligning themselves, playing the shift, and then people are like, well, how do you beat the shift? Right? You either bunt or you hit it over their head, right? Well, the same thing applies here. You're gonna have to run the ball. How did the Washington Commanders finally beat the streak of the Eagles? They ran the ball down their throats, and that's how you beat yes, you're gonna have to be patient. You're gonna have to long drives and all that stuff, but that's what you have right now. You don't have Cooper Kupp, so this is how you take advantage of that too high shell that Big Fan Show has made very popular, and he's not even in the league, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like the guy who everybody is taking his defense from, he's not even in the league. So that's another guy. Who knows? Maybe you'll see. I know Ram fans might be asking themselves if he's going to come to the Rams, but that's for another time. Let me give you my player matchup. Mine is Jalen Ramsey against Chris Olave. I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Chris Olave. I honestly didn't know. I mean, everybody going into the draft process talked about what a great route runner he was, and how he was going to be a steal, and he has been in terms of where he was picked, number 12. And we've seen receivers do well when they've come into the league because of it. Receivers are so much better now than we've seen 10, 15 years ago, because they do this all the time. And one of the things I noticed last week in terms of Jalen Ramsey and going up against DeAndre Hopkins was he was targeted 10 times, and DeAndre Hopkins caught 7 balls. And one of the things, it's become a theme this season with the Rams and their defense and Jalen Ramsey, is that the big receivers, the elite receivers, tend to have a big game against the Rams. And are they gonna keep doing this with Jalen Ramsey, where they play him off the ball, or are they gonna put him on the best receiver? And that's what I want to see. If he does that, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins didn't go off. I mean, 71 yards. Yeah, he did. He caught 7 of 10 targets, but he didn't go off. So what happens here with Chris Olave? It'll be a great matchup if we get to see that, because of the great route running that Chris Olave has.
Well, the whole thing I hear about is like, when you ask, hey, Jalen, why won't you shadow this guy? Or Raheem, why don't you put Jalen on this guy? It's like, well, like, you put this guy on the best player, they won't target Jalen, and then they'll take him out of the game, and he can't make the plays because he's such a great playmaker. Well, they have one takeaway in the last. I'm ruining my point that I'm gonna make in the future, but like, when you're saying, well, like, he can't make plays, they're not making plays right now. So I might as well have the guy shadow people, and enough with that. Just kind of, just make adjustment. I know the schemes for coaches, you don't want to tinker with it. They're that's like their baby, but at some point, if the whole point is like to make Jalen be involved in the game to make plays, it ain't happening right now. So I might as well give him to the best player and go at it. And I know you said that DeAndre, didn't have the craziest game, but there was a couple of times where I saw DeAndre make a play, and who was next to him in coverage? Jalen Ramsey. So Uh, and it's funny because Jalen Ramsey, like when his team loses and he has a good game, he talks, and then when he's not having a good game and the team loses, he doesn't talk. He didn't want to talk to me last week, but we'll see what happens with Jalen Ramsey and Chris Olave this week.
Well, that's a great segue there, Gilbert. Why don't you give us your key to the game for this matchup?
Yeah, I'm fired up because we all focus on the offense. I'm guilty of it. Every time I read a story, it's a lead with the offense all the time. This offense stinks. They're not doing well. They don't score points. It's a frustrating offense to watch. But I asked Sean McVay about this earlier, and I'm like, when you said you wanted complimentary football, was it because you want the defense to finally help you out with a takeaway? He didn't want to bite. He didn't say that's what it was. But at some point, when you're over here and you're drowning, and you need somebody to help you, like you're pulling out the hand, like, hey, give me a fumble, give me a scoop and score, give me a turnover so I could kind of get on this life raft here. And the defense is not doing it. And it's such a hard question to ask the players, like, how do you generate a takeaway? How do you make game changing plays? And all I hear about from the defense is like, you got to be in the right spot. You got to make the play. You can't drop the ball. Like they've dropped a lot of interceptions too, Victor. So for my key to the game is just make a freaking play. I use a different F word in the rundown. Like I'm tired of watching this team like just be this defense is boring. Like they don't make game changing plays. Like the last time they did that was when Cody Durang at the pick six and almost got that wasn't a pick six. It was almost a pick six. It was a touchdown return for 57 yards, I think, or 47, something like that. And they only have one takeaway in the last 7 games combined. And two in the between that, they had 3 games in a row without takeaway, and they had one, and then another 3 games in a row without takeaway. So when your offense is just drowning and you're not helping, it's just a recipe for disaster. And that's complementary football the opposite way. But
Yeah,
uh,
and no,
and
go ahead.
go ahead, Victor, because all I wanted to say was like also at the same time contain Alvin Kamara, which is going to be a big problem. And then sometimes you never know what Taysom Hill, he could have a good game or a very quiet game. So just kind of be aware of the Joker players, you know.
Yeah, and that's a great point by you because I was gonna bring up like last time they faced the Rams defense faced someone like Kamara, it was Christian McCaffrey
Yep.
and he tore them apart. So that's a good call there. Like they need to make sure they stop him and then as you talked about what shuts a home crowd up turnovers, man. If you can turn the ball over there, if you can get a couple of turnovers, especially against Andy Dalton, who threw what was it? Was it 3 or 2 pick sixes against the Cardinals? I know for sure it was 2. I know he threw three
Yeah.
interceptions.
It was on Thursday Night
So
Football, right?
you're right, exactly. So there you go. There's something you can take from the Cardinals game there and you and apply it here against the Saints. But mine is going to go back to the offense, and I'll keep it simple. It's just spread the ball around, especially if Stafford is back. Get your guys involved, as we talked about earlier with Allen Robinson, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee. I want to see Kyren Williams out there. I want to see Cam Akers. I want to use all 3 of those running backs, Zero Handers, and run the ball, to try to get through that too high shell, that defense that we talked about. Run the ball, set up your play action. As you said, try to use some of those fast guys like Tutu Atwell, and maybe we see McCutcheon out there. Who knows? But use a lot. Spread the ball around and use all your weapons. I'll keep it as simple as that, Gilbert.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned pretty much the whole offense without saying, "Hey, just run the football better," because we do that every single week. But this, I don't know, it's just a really strange offense, Victor here. But I don't know, maybe this could be the game where they finally get the running game going and get Kyren Williams going. But in order to get Van Jefferson and Allen Robinson and Tutu Atwell involved, you got to get the running game going, play action, all that. So that's a great point. So. And also that starts with the offensive line. That's 2 things they can't do. O-line can't protect, can't create running lanes, and this running backs can't create for themselves either.
And hopefully he finally goes away from that 11 personnel and we see more jumbo packages and different players out there to try to go against Dennis Allen's defense. But let's get to our House of Horns mailbag time here and some of the questions we have for you. And from our engagement this week. We have Ernesto Rivera, who says, "Let's see some more Kyren. Love the explosion I saw from him on Sunday. Would also like to feed Allen Robinson more now. That contract isn't for nothing." So there we go. A couple of things we talked about.
Yeah, you know what? And I want to see the younger guys too, but Allen Robinson is going to be part of this core for the next year or two. So, yeah, maybe let's see if we get some return and an investment. I know a couple questions that Allen Robinson got earlier in the year was like, "Is this weird for you to be the number 2 guy because Cooper Kupp is number 1, and in Jacksonville, Chicago, you're the number 1 guy? Is that why it's taking him a while to get going?" And shout out to Allen Robinson. He's kind of a quiet guy, but he's always available to talk. And like today, it was kind of a quiet locker room, but he was hanging out. He took a bunch of one-on-one interviews. He did TV interviews. And I was one of the last ones. I said, "Hey, I know you've spoken a lot, and you mind talking to me?" And he spoke to me, and he didn't want to say about the targets. Like he knows the targets are going to go up. And then he's like, "I'm hoping they do," because you just never know how the game turns out. Like he's just being, just kind of keep it safe. But he's expecting to be like the number 1 guy, but you just never know how it could play out. Maybe it is a run heavy scheme. Maybe he's more of a blocker, but just finding ways to kind of get this offense going and contributing in different ways. I think that's all Allen Robinson cares about. Just make sure the offense looks like it's playing better because it hasn't shown that. Remember last week, Sean McVay saying like, "I can't even see improvements out there. I can't even do that." Like, there's no improvements. If there's no improvements, and it means he's not getting the ball, and that's okay for him. Just maybe he contributes in the running game, whatever it is. That's all Allen Robinson cares about. And then in terms of Kyren Williams, like we're always asking for it, Victor. Like just pick a running back or 2 and stick with the guy. Like if you know you're done with Cam Akers, I know Cam Akers has 1 more year on his contract, but like, what is he gonna do now? Like you just put him on the bench, go with Darrell Henderson and Kyren Williams, and just go with those 2 guys and see what
Yeah,
happens.
go with the hot guy.
Go
Yep.
with the hot guy. It's just like when you're having 4 or 5 different guys, it's hard, but just commit to 2 guys. And I know Cam Akers has some pop every now and then, but he's getting out opportunities. Cam Akers, he's not making the most of it. So get out the way and put in Kyren Williams and give him a chance because this kid is eager. He wants to show what he could do. And sometimes when you're that eager and you want to show what you could do, it leads to a couple of good games. So I definitely want to see more of Kyren Williams. Why not? But the one that's shown the most is Darrell Henderson. So I think he deserves a couple more carries too.
Yeah, the guy I feel bad for is Allen Robinson because he came here, he's not going anywhere. He's not going to get cut because he was handpicked by McVay. McVay was the one that wanted him. They made sure to work him in under the cap. And the reason I feel bad for him is because he's gone from, the a bad Jacksonville situation to, he gets to Chicago, they do well, but then, his quarterback haven't been great. And, with Blake Bortles and then who he had in Chicago. And, and then now you have Stafford and you can't get the ball. So it's been a pretty bad situation for him. So I hope that now that Cooper Kupp is hurt, that he gets to kind of live up to what he was brought in to be. But let's get to watch Doge. It says, "Why doesn't McVay commit to the run? We were
Yeah.
doing so well, especially on the first drive of the game versus Arizona, and he just has Wolford throw like he is Matthew Stafford."
Yeah, I'm glad he brought up that first drive because that was a really good drive. I think all of us in the press box were excited. Like, "Oh, look at this. There's a keeper there, a couple, RPOs, design runs for the quarterback. Oh, what a great running game. He got Darrell Henderson, and then, oh, boom, Cam Akers gets the first down on a third down conversion. So, uh, in terms of that scripted play, they got 32 rushing yards on that one. I thought that's big because the game before that they only got 60 yards or whatever it is in Tampa Bay, and they also got they got 4 first downs. And the game in Tampa Bay, they only got like 8 first downs. So they were halfway to their numbers just off that one scripted drive. And then they got away from the run. Like they went back to like some dropbacks, putting more pressure on your banged up offensive line, having your backup quarterback take a bunch of hits. And that's why at some point I'm like, just put in Bryce Perkins. Like he'll make a play with his legs at least. Like I know Wolford is somewhat mobile, but not really. Like at least Bryce Perkins, he'll make you miss.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a head scratcher. But that first drive was like, hey, it's right there. You did it. You just keep doing more of that. And then after that, like they went from 32 rushing yards to they finished to like what 65. So it was the same old story after that. But that was a good first drive.
I got to give you credit because I read your story, like the post game show, and you talked about the scripted plays, the 14 scripted plays, and how good those were, and what they did in terms of the offensive production, and how once those went away, the offense just got like as usual broken. And you weren't the only person that I saw as headlines talk about those scripted plays. So we want to see more of those scripted plays throughout the game, and and it was fair because everybody asked about that. So
Yeah.
good on you
Dude,
for putting.
even that bootleg to the left from Wolford to Allen Robinson for 14 yards was awesome to see, but then they just stopped doing it.
Yeah, all right, let's moving on to our last question from American Steel. It says, play the rookies. What do we got to lose? My win some games, never know. Got 10 picks next year in the draft. So he already knows how many
Yeah.
picks the Rams have next year. So there you go. I mean, that's a way to build your team with 10 picks. But what do you have to say to American Steel?
I guess I'll say this for those 10 picks, maybe 4 of them should be offensive linemen, right? Maybe
Yeah.
the second and the third round pick should be linemen, but yeah, we've gotten to that point where I need to start checking mock drafts for the second round of the draft for the Rams because they don't have a first round pick. But yeah, like we mentioned, we got to see some of these young guys, like Kyren Williams and Tutu Atwell, guys on defense too. You mentioned Kobe Durant, so uh, yeah, I don't know. It's tough because like there's still like 8 games is a lot. That's half a season, so you don't want to be admitting that you're trying to like just going with the young guys. So maybe we're a little early there, but the season's 3-6. You could do it without admitting that you're just trying to play the young guys. So again, comment here under the video who you want to see more of in terms of young guys. Again, cap it to 3 years of NFL experience. Can't be like a 5th-year guy. Come on, they shown you who they are. So give me like a young guy on the comments: Kyren Williams, Tutu Atwell, Kobe Durant, Darion Kendrick, Ernest Jones, Terrell Lewis. The list goes on and on. So yeah, we'll see a lot more of the young guys to end out this regular season.
Well, we've gotten towards the end of the show here, Gilbert, and it's you know what time it is. It's time for
Sure.
our prediction. But before you give me your prediction, let me let you know what the spread is. The Rams are 4-point underdogs at New Orleans on Sunday. And for the first time this year, the over-under is under 40, Gilbert. It is 38 and a
Wow.
half. So they're expecting Vegas is expecting a low scoring game. So give us your prediction because I'm actually really interested to find out how you're where you're gonna go or leaning towards in this game.
Yeah, I just did a quick check on the odds real quick because I feel like maybe that might have changed after Stafford was kind of like expected to play. And the one I checked at least was -3.5. So it didn't change too much from 4, right? Because
Yeah.
earlier in the day I saw it was -4.5. So yeah, I guess having Stafford is you could have done it to a point, but to be yeah, I guess you get 3 points, right? When you're the home team for the Saints. So maybe it's not a big thing, but the Saints are 3-7. So that kind of shows you where the Rams are in terms of I guess their season, their players, or whatever it is. People don't have faith in the Rams. And then to be 38 points and a total there, that's really low, Victor, because this team has showed us they can't even score 20 points. So yeah, this is a tough one. You're right. Making me go first, but oh man, they're a 3-game losing streak. I will bet you that I don't know if on top of my head I should, but I bet you Sean McVay's never lost 4 in a row, right? Like that's like his streak
Yeah, but a
affiliate.
lot of his streaks have ended this season, so we can't
Yeah,
count
I
on
know.
that either.
Yeah. No, you know what? I know why. The Saints have Cameron Jordan. This offensive line is not doing well. And when you have a good pass rush like that, like the Cardinals didn't have one. I know JJ Watt's not the same dude, but he became that dude. That tells you enough right there. So, yes, I'm going with the Saints here to drop the Rams. So, what would that be? 3-7? Yeesh. Give me the Saints here, and I will go. I think I'll go a little over here. No, I try to be nice to the Rams sometimes, but no, there'll be 17 points for them, and I'll give it 23 to the Saints.
23-17.
Does
There
that
you go.
cover? I don't even know. Actually, do math here. 33.
Yeah, it's 40 points. So yeah,
Oh,
23 and
over.
17. Yeah, so you're
Yeah,
going with the over there.
whatever. It's pretty low.
Yeah. I went back. I didn't even have to think about this game. I just know how good the Saints are at home. It's very hard to beat them at home. Um yeah, unless you have a really good team. And I just think the defense is gonna Dennis Allen. The one thing that he does have is that he plays a really good defense, even though he doesn't have some of the guys he had last year. And so for me, I'm gonna go with the Saints as well. I have it as a 17-10 game, so I'm
Whoa.
gonna do the under as well. I just don't have any faith. And until, like you've been saying, like you're the one that kind of changed my mind, is and you the way you said it is like, until I see it from them, I'm not gonna change it. They haven't scored more than 20 points in a while now. And I'm not gonna pick the we did last week just because we saw what McVay's record was against uh uh, Cliff Kingsbury again with
And,
the
and they
tons
had
of
a
stuff.
backup playing. They had a start, and they were at home. Like that's a game
Yeah.
that's supposed to win. I don't care how bad you've been, and they still couldn't win that one.
So there you go. And like we talked about with the whole streaks, McVay, all his streaks have pretty much been broken this year.
Yeah.
So,
Remember
you
that
know,
halftime when he used to be the lead at halftime? We used to always hear like, "Oh, he's
yeah,
never lost after leading at halftime." Not nobody cares about that anymore.
no. So yeah, unfortunately, guys, I know everybody knows though. Like Ram fans know, like they're happy that they got their Super Bowl. They know what the season is or not. One of the things I respect about Ram fans is that they're not over here trying to be something they're not. They know exactly what kind of team they have. It's not very good this year. They're not scoring that many points. The data is there. Like it's been a rough year. The injuries have finally caught up to the Rams for once this year. You've been the healthiest team for 4 years. And that's just the reality of it. You're gonna have bad seasons. Hey, you got your Super Bowl. Hey, that's it. But go ahead and
But,
plug
but,
away.
but also too,
Go
Vic,
ahead.
you know the universal sign for getting the check, right? Like this. The,
Yeah.
the bill was due on all the draft picks you gave up.
Yep.
You
Yep.
won a Super Bowl. There's a season. You're paying for it, and I think everybody's
Yep.
happy. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess on that note, maybe we can all get together and pay the tab here. But
Yeah.
or not. The Kroenke has a lot of money. But on that note, Victor, I need to get to New Orleans because I'm excited for that. I went to New Orleans with you the first time I went there, and we had a blast. So
Yeah.
hopefully, I'm taking the girlfriend this time with Caroline. So create some memories there, and it's going to be a bad football game probably, but I'm going to enjoy myself on Bourbon Street. But check in on me. Also, to House of Horns viewers, see where I am and make sure I'm okay, and I get to the game. But on that note, ya nos vamos, pues vámonos.